Hey guys, welcome to part 2 of my sock knitting tutorial. If you haven't seen part 1, go click the link that I've got down below in the description box and you can join me once you've made it this far. So what you should have by now is a nice cuff of the sock right here, and then goes down to form a nice little heel, curves over, and then you've got a considerable length, long enough for a foot to stick in. You can actually put your foot in now and see if it's long enough to reach your toes. If it's not, just grow that out, knitting in the round as much as you want. What I'm going to show you in this video is just how to finish off the sock. We're going to do the curve of the toes and be done with it. Here's a closer look at my sock so far. I've got the cuff here, goes down to the heel, then you've got this cool little triangle part where it decreases down to where we're going to put the toes. So to do the toes, you should have your 20 stitches here, and then 10 stitches here, 10 stitches here still. And what we're going to do is we're going to do the same decreasing pattern, well, kind of the same decreasing pattern that we did here when we were doing the heel. We're just going to kind of double it up. So we're going to decrease right here, right here, right here, and right here. So there's going to be one decrease on needle 1, 2 decreases on needle 2, and 1 decrease on needle 3. And similarly, like before, you're going to do a round of decreasing and then a round of straight knitting and then another round of decreasing. And I will show you how to do the first round of decreasing. So let's start on the first needle here and just knit all the way to the end, which is going to be that first corner. So knit, knit, knit. Stop when you get to the last 3 stitches like we did before, and we're going to knit 2 together and then just knit that last one. So knit these 2 together just like this. Pull them off, and then knit the last stitch on there. So you've decreased this whole set down to 9 stitches. Flip it over and we'll continue on to the needle with 20 stitches. And for this one, we're going to decrease at the start of the row and then decrease at the end of the row as well. So we're going to be decreasing by 2 for this needle. So to start off, you're going to knit the first one like normal. Not going to do any decreasing here. Just knit it, and then for this one we're going to do the SSK, which is kind of the reverse decrease. So it's going to send the stitches that way to the left, kind of. I don't know if that's actually what happens, but that's kind of how I like to think of it. So to do the SSK, just slip 2 stitches off, then bring back in your left needle as if you were going to purl them, and your right needle is along the back side. Take your yarn and pull those 2 stitches off, just like that. So that's a decrease. And then we're going to knit to the end of the row. At the end of the row now, stop once you have 3 stitches once again, and we're going to decrease these ones, but we're going to do a normal decrease, which is going to pull everything to the right. Right? Yes, that's what happens. You decrease by 2 and it pulls it to the right. So we're going to grab these 2, if I can. Everything is very tight today. I blame the camera. So knit those 2 together and pull them off, and then we just have 1 more stitch on the left needle. You can just knit that off like normal. Cool. So we've finished with that one, and we've decreased from 20 down to 18 on this needle. And you can already actually see a tiny bit of a pinch here. It's curving inwards to the left here, curving inwards to the right on this side, right? And then on this one, we're also going to do one more decrease. And on this one, you're going to want to have it go to the left again, because you want to continue encouraging that curve of the toe. So knit the first stitch together, or just knit the first stitch like normal. This is on your third needle. And then we're going to do the SSK decrease again for the next two. So slip off those two stitches, and then put your needle back in them, and knit them off to do the SSK. Cool. And then you can knit down to the end of the row. I will do a video on like exactly what SSK is and what you can do with it. It's just a different, it's kind of like the purling version of doing a normal decrease. I found that in knitting, every single stitch has its opposite, and a good way to think about SSK is just kind of the opposite of a normal knitting decrease, which is probably not that helpful, but it's helpful for me. So now this is what it looks like after that round of decreasing. So we have 18 stitches on this one, and we have 9 stitches on each of these, on these two small needles. Your next round is going to be a round of just straight knitting. So just knit all the way around with no decreases, and then do another round of decreasing again, just like I showed you there. And you're going to keep doing this, a round of decreasing and a round of knitting, a round of decreasing and a round of knitting, until you get to 5 stitches on these two needles and 10 stitches on this top needle. Okay? So do your rounds of knitting and decreasing and knitting and decreasing, and I will meet you back here once you have 5 stitches on here, 10 on here, and 5 stitches on this needle. After a couple more rounds of decreasing and knitting, here's what we have. We've got this nice little curve to come up to form the top of the toes on the sock, and it's pretty much finished. If you wanted to now, you could be sloppy. I have been sloppy in the past before. You can just weave all of these last stitches off together, just sew them together, graft them however you want. What I'm going to do is I'm going to do a Kitchener stitch, which is what most socks use, so you don't have kind of like a pointy end or anything like that, and so it looks pretty seamless. So to do that, knit the 5 stitches that are on those 10 stitches that are split amongst the 2 needles. We're going to knit 5 of those onto the other 5, so there's going to be 10 and 10 on your 2 needles. Alright, so put that needle aside, and we've got it down to 2 needles. We've got 20 stitches, 10 on each needle here. What you're going to do is make sure your yarn that is coming out is on the back needle, so it's on this one, not the front needle. And now we can cut the yarn and put it onto a tapestry needle. I should have said at the beginning of this video that you'll need a tapestry needle before we started. So if you don't have one, run to the craft store or improvise a little bit. So to do the Kitchener stitch, it's very simple. You just knit 1 stitch, you just pull off a stitch the knit way, so go in as if you're going to knit it, and then pull it off. And then for the next one, you're going to purl it, but you're going to leave it on the needle. Don't pull it off. Instead, just pull the rest of the yarn through the stitch. And then you do the same to the back needle, but you do the opposite. So move the needle to the back, and you're going to purl off a stitch. So pull this stitch off as if you were going to purl it, coming in like that. And then for the next one, you're going to knit it without pulling it off. Then come back up to the front again, and we'll do the same. So knit off a stitch like this, as if you're going to knit it, pull it off, and then do a purl, but leave that on the needle. Pull it through. Pull it pretty tight too. Back on the back side, purl off a stitch, and then come in through a knit one as if you're going to knit it, but leave it on the needle. Back to the front, knit off a stitch, and purl, but leave it on the needle. Go to the back, purl off a stitch, and then go in through one to knit, but leave it on the needle. And as you can see, it's closing it up nicely without kind of an obvious seam. Once you've got it down to 2 stitches left on both needles, you can just do a knit through there and a purl through this one and slide them both off. It's probably not the best way of doing it, but that's how I do it. I can hear someone watching this and they're probably cringing at me doing this, but that's how I do it. If you do it a different way, then why are you watching this video? You probably already know how to knit a sock. So what I do to kind of get rid of this little pointy tail end is I poke it in through the sock and I turn the sock inside out. Turn it inside out and just pull everything through there. There's that. And there's no need to tie a knot or anything like that. What you can do is you can just weave it in through along the side or along the top of it. Just make sure you're not putting it through the bottom of the sock, just so your foot is not kind of irritated by this little piece of thread that's in there. It's not a big deal how you do it, but I just choose some of the purls here that are poking out, and I weave my tapestry needle through them. And I'll usually do this through a couple different directions just because I'm paranoid, but really there's no threat of this coming undone at all, so there's no need to even tie a knot at the end. So once you're satisfied with your weaving there, you can just take your scissors, cut it off, pull everything out, loosen it all up. When you're all finished, here is the end result. You've got a sock. Knitting a sock it can be frustratingly difficult, and sometimes it seems like there's not that much payoff, but it really depends on what you do with it. Once you have the basic steps, the turning of the heel and the decreasing down, you're free to really do whatever you want with it. You can introduce different colors, you can try different patterns. Here's a sock that I did a while ago, and it has kind of a thicker wool for the yarn, so it's a little cozier for the feet. And on the top, I just switched out the yarn, so I've got 2 different colors in there. So you can be creative with this. Let me know in the comments any tips or tricks that you've found while knitting socks, or maybe you just hate knitting socks completely and you will settle for just buying your socks in a cheap pack from the store, which is probably a wiser decision. But either way, I hope you and your feet enjoyed the video, and I will see you next time.